Hey everyone, a question I get asked all the time is what miter saw should I get if I'm looking to get into doing some renovations or woodworking. So I have 3 miter saws behind me here. They're all made by Ryobi, and I'm going to go over some of the differences with each of the saws. So to start, these are all sliding miter saws, meaning they slide on these bars so that you can cut longer material. You can buy miter saws called compound miter saws, and they do not slide, so they only cut straight down. I would not recommend getting one of those. They are a total waste of money in my opinion. Make sure you get a sliding miter. So with the 7 1/4 inch miter saw, one of the nice things is it's really lightweight. Another great thing is the 7 1/4 inch blades are really cheap. You can get these for $10 to $15 and put them on your circular saw as well. The 10-inch blades are more expensive, costing roughly $30 to $40, and the 12-inch miter saw blade is going to cost you somewhere between $40 and $50. I'm going to do a test here, cutting through this piece of OSB to show you the maximum cut length on each saw. So the 7 1/4 inch miter saw, when I do the full length cut, it cuts roughly 10 inches in length, which is nice. That will cut through almost any material. The 10-inch sliding miter saw, when I do the same test, it cuts quite a bit further. It goes 14 inches in length. And then the 12-inch miter saw, it cuts roughly 15 inches in length. Another thing that I want to show you is each of these saws can cut different thicknesses of materials. This is important. So for example, the 7 1/4 inch miter saw, it cannot cut fully through something like a 4x4. So I've got a 4x4 here. Let me cut it and show you how far it goes. As you can see, the motor hits and it cuts only about 3 inches in depth, which is okay for most materials. But if you're working on decks or fences, a 10-inch miter saw is going to cut cleanly through a 4x4 without bottoming out at all. And then the 12-inch miter saw, it can cut cleanly through things like 6x6s, for example. If you're working with timber or larger items, that comes in handy. Another thing that I should show you is cutting baseboard with these saws. So all of these saws can miter on 45s both directions, and they can also bevel. So if you're looking to do some joinery with your baseboards, these can all bevel to 45 degrees, which is great. You can do nice inside and outside miters, but some people, when they're cutting baseboard or crown molding, they like to hold the baseboard up vertically against the back of the fence. And the problem is the 7 1/4 inch saw and the 10-inch saw will not cut through tall baseboard like this. So most baseboard nowadays is 5.5 inches tall, and as you can see, it bottoms out and does not finish that cut. Meanwhile, the 12-inch miter saw, it can cut cleanly through 5.5 inch baseboard. This is extremely important if you're doing a lot of trim work, or if you're doing crown molding, you're going to want a 12-inch saw. For basic trim work, you won't have a problem with a 10-inch sliding miter saw. You can cut all the miters that you need. The next thing I want to mention, the 10-inch miter saws, one of the nice things about them is the 10-inch blades are interchangeable on almost all table saws. Table saws use 10-inch blades, so that instead of buying multiple blades, you can just take it from your miter saw, put it on your table saw. You can get a rough cut blade and a nice fine finish blade and not have to spend all the money on a 12-inch that you can only use on one tool. Now this 10-inch sliding miter saw, it weighs 45 pounds, which is quite a bit, but it's not too heavy. You can move it around easily. The 12-inch sliding miter saw weighs 55 pounds. I noticed personally that the 12-inch miter saws are big saws. You need more room to use them as they slide back farther. They're heavier. They're extremely painful to move around. The 7 1/4 inch saw, it is nice and small. It weighs 31 pounds, so this thing's super handy for taking on job sites. And not being able to cut through a 4x4, it's not the biggest deal to me, because I can always use my circular saw or just flip it over and cut both sides. Here's a closer look at this saw. Nice and compact, miters, bevels, it has a laser, it does everything you want. The 10-inch saw, another close look at this. This has been my go-to saw for a long time, and to anybody watching this, I'd recommend to just get yourself a 10-inch miter. It'll do everything that you want. It's cheaper, the blades are cheaper, it's lighter, it's easier to use, easier to move around. Hopefully this video was helpful to you.